Well, hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Ultimate Wellness Group Transformation Tuesday. It is the diabetic and the first book club episode of the Transformation Tuesday. Here's one that I think is very, very important for us to continue to keep in our mind as we go through the media when they're talking about certain conditions and certain aspects of health across the country. Subjects are often identified not as Black, but using coded references as the urban poor, socioeconomically disadvantaged, or inner city residents. You know, there's a lot of times when things on the news are coded language for us, right? And to me, even the words African American is really kind of silly, because Africa is after a man named Africanus, who was a major colonizer of the continent. And then Amerigo Vespucci is where America came from. So, you know, why would we walk around calling ourselves after two colonizing white men? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But, you know, as we go through this book, maybe we can start looking at a lot more things from a more scientific perspective and you know, kind of look at our whole lives and see what's happening. Here's something that I kind of wanted to comment on, because on page 7, she says, research is an utterly essential and desirable component of treatment, but its subjects must be aware that they are participating, must be informed, must consent, and must be allowed to weigh the possible risks and benefits. I don't know about you all, but I have a serious issue with that statement, because I don't necessarily believe that that's true. I believe that that's true when you're talking about barbaric people, racist, mean, evil, diabolical people. Yes, they should be forthright. But why would you even expect anything like that from persons who's vile and evil and diabolical, right? When we're talking about going back and researching and learning from indigenous societies, like if you were to go to a native indigenous people from here that are subjugated to reservations around the country, and you sit and you talk to them about what they used to do in health, they didn't do barbaric things that you would need informed consent. If you go to the motherland and you talk to some of the people that live off in some of the countryside, and you talk about some of the things that they use to heal, they're not barbaric practices. You know, you may go into the steam hut or what they call the hot house in some of the native people's places. In the motherland, it's the same situation. You may go to a plant or go to a root or go to something in nature. But barbarism and like bloodletting and all of these kind of crazy things, these medications and stuff to make people diarrhea and vomit and all these kind of stuff, those things weren't happening in indigenous society. So, you know, I'm not necessarily sure I agree at all that there needs to be a lot of experimentation on people other than with things that are healthy. Like, okay, yeah, you want to make sure that your immune system is good. Why don't you eat blueberries on Monday and raspberries on Tuesdays and strawberries on Thursday and blackberries on Friday? Eat a good large amount and see how good that does for your immune system. That's an experiment that can't do any harm to you. So if we're going to experiment that way, that would be a good thing. But when you're talking about getting somebody's informed consent and having all of these things that you need to ask people for before they go into an experiment, it's because you already know it's potentially going to kill them. And so, no, we have to get rid of that mind state of people that want to do wrong in the name of their ideas, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. The thing that keeps coming to my mind in that statement when I read that is a woman that gets diagnosed with breast cancer and then they remove her breasts. That's so barbaric to me. I'd like to meet the person that decided to start doing that to people and practice martial arts on them for about 2-3 days. So another profound statement, I thought. On page 9, towards the bottom, we quite logically cede medical authority to medical experts, but this book will illustrate how race, culture, and economics have trumped medical and scientific truths at every turn. It will make the case that physicians had every motive to skew narratives against their Black subjects. not because they were especially racist or unfair, although many were, but because the culture of American medicine has mirrored the larger culture that encompassed enslavement, segregation, and less dramatic forms of racial inequality. And I know those of you who have been around me for a while listening, I tell you, the same racism that's in every other part of the world is in this system majorly. So every time we see the police murder somebody, just imagine how many racist doctors are in the hospitals disfiguring and demembering parts of people's bodies and basically murdering these people, right? So we have to be really careful of where we go when we're looking for somebody to trust. Truly agree to over my understanding, my research, and even people that I've talked to over the years. As I said, I've talked to a lot of older Black people that have been subjugated to a lot of these things. And the stuff that they do to Black people were to try to figure out what was the best thing to do for white people. Make your mistakes on these Black people and then go over here. And after you perfect it, then that's when you take it over to the white folks. We were subjugated to that for years after years after years, right? And I think I'm gonna leave it right there. No, I take that back. One last thing. On page 27, when we had the discussion on the vaccines a couple of weeks ago, I talked about the infrastructure of America and Europe being the large part of why communicable diseases went down. The infectious diseases were eradicated because of practices of being more clean, not necessarily vaccines. So here's a statement she makes. Even the simplest public health measures, hand washing and antiseptic techniques, clean water, sound pathogen-free housing, and untainted food supply, sewage management, and quantitative disease reporting were all in the future. But those were the things that decreased the disease amongst America and the European countries, as Erica mentioned. If we can read these pages, imagine what those people were going through, right? And so that's the part that we have to gird up our courageousness and our bravery and read the book and then vow that this is never going to happen to us again, right? It says, now you have me tearing. They did that to me in 2013. I felt dismembered and voiceless. Yes, ma'am. And that's why we have to do these type of things. For a person like yourself who knows that this has been done to you personally, you know, we have to make these things known, because we have to make sure that if you have any daughters or you have any nieces, that it never happens to them. The type of things that are happening to men, we got to make sure that this doesn't happen to our boys, to our nephews, to our sons. No more. And that's why it's so profound that the minister said, we're not taking your vaccinations. If you try to force your vaccinations on us, you have declared war. So bring it, because we're going to stand on this. So thank you, Cynthia, for being vulnerable and mentioning that. Appreciate your strength. Not to pat me on the back, but this show being based in How to Eat to Live. How to Eat to Live is more of a do for self book, right? It's not, you don't have to go out and do a whole lot. You have to learn, and then you start applying that at the grocery store or at the food co-op or in the garden. And then your refrigerator starts looking different. Your cupboard starts looking different. What's going in the oven on top of the stove looks different. And when you sit down at your plate, you have a different reality, because you put in the work, you put in the time, you put in the learning, right? So I agree with you, Sister Lynn, because if we get more serious about how to eat to live and the things that Donald Elijah Muhammad is telling us in this book, we will have a much less need for a medical system that doesn't care for us, right? So we could be more conscious on the garden and choosing the right foods and eating the right way, and then passing that down as a new paradigm to our children on, this is the way that you should take care of yourself, so you won't have to rely on murderers, liars, and diabolical thoughts, right? And if you can see how the fat is associated, right? So this fat that you see here on the outside and under her arm and on the side of her body, all of us have probably seen a person that's really fat and they walk and all that stuff is jiggling and all that. That's all that fat outside. But the other part that I also want you to see is look at all the fat inside on the organs, right? So this is the liver And over on this side, you see a liver, it's fatty liver. You see all the fat around the intestines where there's not much over here. And so that is just a segue into talking about what happens in a human body when we are like that, right? Okay, so this truck with all of this stuff on the back of it, I think most of us would come to a conclusion that, man, that's too much for that truck. That truck can't handle all that stuff on there. That's going to weigh that truck down. It's going to tear up the transmission, probably pull on the engine and destroy the engine earlier, bust the tires, mess up the axles. There's going to be all kinds of things that's wrong with this truck, mess up the shocks, right? So we can look at that truck and we can say that that's just too much. That's overburdening that truck. That truck can't handle it. It wasn't even made to carry that much weight, more than likely. And so the question is, doesn't it, the picture that I just showed with the lady and all that fat, that's kind of very similar, right? We're overburdening. Any person that gains that much weight, any person that develops diabetes is a problem of overconsumption. You just did too much. And so we got to pull back and do something different, right? What does that look like in reality? It looks like that. Again, let me know if the picture of the heart is up there and can you see it? You can see the truck is BMI. Medical doctors use aspirin. Oh, Duro Muhammad asked about a BMI. Good question. Body mass index. Originally, when body mass index first came out, it was based on Europeans, white people. And so it was very inaccurate for any type of people other than white folks. Over the years, they have tried to make some adjustments. And so in 2020, I would say a BMI is more accurate, but I still do not think that it is as accurate for Black people, because Black people, because of our melanin, have the most density to our muscles. So what do I mean? So you're looking here at this picture of the heart, right? And you see the muscle aspect of it here. This is the muscle of the heart. The fatty aspect of the heart is necessary because this is what, as it beats like it beats, this is what's rubbing up against the pleura. That's the layer of things around it. And then of course the lung is sitting right here, and the other lung is sitting right here. So the fat actually keeps the organs from doing too much damage to each other. But the point that I'm getting to is that when you look at a person who is very light skinned, the muscles inside of the body will not be as dark. When you have a real dark Black person, a black person, their muscles are more dark. They have more melanin on the outside of the body, but they have more melanin on the inside of the body. And so when that is not taken in consideration, then the measurements of that person can't be taken in consideration correctly. The density of a muscle when there's more melanin in it has been proven to be higher. So what am I saying? When you have a lot of dark skin, your whole entire body is more thick, more associated with everything in nature from a beneficial perspective. There's nothing negative about a whole lot of melanin. And so anytime you hear these diabolical scientists, doctors, whoever they are, start talking about the fact that having dark skin is associated with anything negativity, the only thing that dark skin is associated with negativity is when a white person is controlled and you treat dark skinned people bad because of your racist mind. So that's about it. But back to the point. Good question about the BMI. Back to the point that I'm making is that when you look at this heart over here, which is pretty consistent with what I have seen in normal and some of the surgeries I've been where we actually open people's chest up. And this is very similar to a lot of hearts that I've seen in very fat people and their organs in general. When you go in and you do surgeries on very overweight people, you see fat all over their organs like that. And so I wanted to use that as a good indicator that when you are thinking about that truck that I showed, that is the imagery of what a heart and a liver or a kidney or intestines or just the body in general, when it has all that fat, it's like that truck. You are overburdening that truck with all that weight. You're overburdening that truck in so many different aspects. And it's the same with the human body when we add all this fat. And the thing that I hope you all paid attention to in that picture where it was the slim person and the person that had gained all that weight is none of the organs changed size. The bones didn't change size. So if you are, what we typically say is that we stop growing around 19, 20. If you were 140 pounds when you were 19 or 20, and now you're 50 and you weigh 275, that's 135 pounds of fat. Now, you could have done some working out and your muscles could have gotten a little bigger. Like I talk about some of the athletes, we watch them when they first come in the league, and then you watch them over the years and their muscle structure gets a little bigger. That person is naturally gaining weight as their muscles mature. But the organs inside of the body didn't change size. They're the same size they were when you stopped growing. And so when you looked at that fat person on the left and the person that was thinner on the right, the bones were the same, the organs were all the same, but all that fat is what causes all that weight, right? So I think it was 120 on the one side and 250 on the other. That's 130 pounds. And I literally have seen many people gain that much weight. I've seen many women, many men in their 40s and 50s that were 100 pounds, 75 pounds, 150, 200 pounds larger than they were when they graduated high school. And yet those bones never grew. And those organs never changed their size. So just like that truck, you put all those boxes on there, you're going to wear down that engine, you're going to wear down that transmission, you're going to break, pop the doggone tires, mess up all the intricate parts of that truck trying to do that work. It's the same reality when you're talking about this human body. So when we are looking at the human body and we're going to discuss diabetes, then we have to, of course, take a little look at the pancreas. So let's take a look at the pancreas and talk a little science, and then we'll get into some of the questions and some of the reasons that you should consider something different than what is given to you typically in this medical community. So you see the organ in the middle, yellowish with the green thing in the middle, that's your pancreas. You see over here, you got your spleen. The stomach would be right in this area here. And then the liver would be over on this side and going up towards the top up here. Okay. There are three different aspects to the pancreas. You got the section that produces the fluid that balances our pH. You got this section here. You see it says the acinar secrete enzymes to break down food. And then you got your pancreatic isolates back here that produce insulin and glucagon. Insulin is like a key to a door you open up and cells can pull sugar in. And glucagon is a storage factor of sugar. We store sugar in muscles. We store sugar in the liver for what? To maintain your daily activity. So if your daily activity is pretty consistent, your body knows exactly what to put in the muscles, exactly what to put in the liver. Why? Because you're consistent. You do pretty much the same thing on a regular basis. It would be no different than a good person going to the grocery store and said, okay, I got 3 children. This is about how much they're going to eat. This is how much I have to buy. And you go look in their refrigerator every week and they have the amount of food that it's going to take to feed up. Why? Practice, routine. She understands, right? But if you go and you look at her house or his house when the children are 3, there's probably going to be less food than when those children are 15. It's going to be a whole lot more food, right? Because the amount of food that the children are eating has gone up. And so that's what the body does. The body says, okay, for the amount of activity that you do, you sit on your butt every day. I don't really need a lot. Okay, you're pretty active. You go out and you run and you do all these physical things. You keep active. When you go to the store, you don't park right next to the door. You walk, you park way away. You walk to the store, you walk in the store and walk back to your car. All those type of things, the body has to manage and say, okay, you need this much glucagon. You need this much sugar. So this is what we're going to put in there to keep you on your routine. So if you're on a routine basis, that's what your body does. No different than storing food in the cupboard, in the refrigerator, things of that nature. Okay. So I hope that makes sense to you all. Just imagine if we had a line like that and somebody was running down that line with holding a machete and it had a sharp edge on that side and a sharp edge on that side. They just running down the middle line, cutting everybody that standing on the side. Well, that's the way I describe what is happening when you have diabetes and all that sugar is running around. Sugar is supposed to be attached to blood cells, and that's the way the body does things. Going to not a movie theater, I would say more like maybe an upscale event, like a concert or something like that, and people walk you to your seat. So they say, hey, what's your seat? B37. Oh, yeah, you in the wrong section. You got to go over there. The best B section over there. See, around there where them people are standing right there and dancing? Yeah, that's B27. Okay, so go that way and then somebody will show you. Oh, you're G15. Okay, yeah, here's section G right here. And one starts down there and there's 25 seats. So 17, you're going to be on this side, right? That makes sense if we were to go somewhere and somebody's directing like that. And we have to understand that the human body is the same way. You can't eat food and get sugar and it just goes wherever it wants to. The sugar goes where the body is suggesting that it goes to. Hey, the liver did a whole heck of a lot of work today because you were around a bunch of chemicals. Let's put most of this sugar in that liver so it can regenerate itself. Hey, this dude climbed a mountain today, and this is the first time he's done any exercise in like 4 years. So let's put all this sugar in these muscles so that these muscles can recuperate and clean up some of these things. Hey, that protein that you ate, all those amino acids, yeah, this dude that just climbed that mountain, we need those amino acids so he can repair the muscles and all the damage that was done to the muscles. That's the way the body works. So we usually have sugar tied to a red blood cell, and the red blood cell has been given instructions. Take that to such and such, take that over there, take this there. And so when the sugar is running around in the body because there's so much the body can't keep up with it, it's not being regulated. So it's just running around causing havoc, like that knife, double-edged knife, right? Just running around cutting blood vessels and tearing up nerves. And then we'll see in just a minute why that causes so many problems, okay? Yeah. Victor X, what other factors besides weight are indicators of an overworked pancreas? It's going to be alterations in your sugar levels. So your sugar levels start growing erratic. And I'm going to show a picture in a minute. But also there's a thing that we call acanthosis nigricans. And that's sometimes when you see like a person with black, real darkness around the back of their neck. Sometimes it can be on the side of their faces. Some of us have aunts and uncles like that. And some men, it can be on the neck. It can go down into the shoulders. But most of the time it's right here in the back of the neck. If you look at a person, like if somebody was bald like me, you look at the back of their head and it's one color, but you get right here to this part of the neck, right in here, and it's just dark and looks real thick. It's almost like, 4 or 5 layers of leather. That is a sign that things are starting to go haywire. There are a lot of things that add to that, but that's one of the things that can do that, Brother Victor. So that's a good question. If you're much bigger than you were when you were 19 or 20, when your body stopped growing, you are at risk for diabetes. If you're the type of person that eats a lot of meat, and this is the thing that most people in the medical community haven't done enough insight to figure out, but I did. For years, I would have my diabetic patients follow their sugars after meat, after high starchy foods, potatoes, pasta, rice, things of that nature. And I proved that meat was more a cause of diabetes than starches, but the medical community usually talks about starches more than they talk about meat. They still allow diabetics to eat meat, which I think is a big mistake. The first thing you should do is cut down meat and then starches. They're both bad for diabetes, but meat is a large one. So those would be the things that I would warn people about, my brother.